I love you, my dear Seekers and Darklings. Let's see if this time it works. Let's see if for the first time in a few months I can actually get a new moon reading up. So this is to talk about the new moon in Leo, but I'm recording this during the Lionsgate, August 8th. Now, I'm going to read it as is first, and we can then discuss either a surprising affirmation or a surprising unreasonable argument strikes, and we start getting chances to do altruistic work or make talkative friends and potentially business contacts. As we try our hardest to carefully pick our words in hopes of winning over impressive and loyal company. Still hurting in the ego, but now achingly searching for peace and partnership, we need to stay aware of a racing mind and equally racing hands that are not guaranteed to be effective or certain. More likely trying to correct what we begin to realize were mistakes that we made in the past. Tension between the conscious mind's ideas around modifying or adjusting and the retrospective need to cut ties, end chapters, and more radically transform in ways that conflict with what we are showing the world and our inner joyful selves. Material surprises and stubborn rebellions get in the way of our needed and desired evolution as much as we need to discard, release, or even acknowledge as secure. And even in spite of all the practical or efficient ways we try to think, work, and speak, we may shock others still, run into disruptive resistance, and excuse our unwillingness to adapt. So let's unpack what this is about. First and foremost, we have the new moon in Leo in 12 degrees Leo. We have Mercury in Virgo, technically forming a conjunction with Venus in Leo at the time of the new moon, since 4 degrees Mercury, 29 degrees in Leo, Venus makes a conjunction. It's 5 degrees away. Jupiter conjunct Mars in Gemini, 15 degrees and 10 degrees respectively. The nodes in 7 degrees, north node 7 degrees Aries, south node 7 degrees Libra. Saturn in 18 degrees Pisces, but Saturn is retrograde at the time of this new moon. Uranus in 26.5 degrees Taurus. Neptune in 29.4 degrees in Pisces, retrograding at the time of this new moon. Also retrograding at the time of this new moon, Pluto in Aquarius, 0.34 degrees. Lilith is finally in Libra. We're going to have to discuss that a little. Chiron in Aries, 23.3 degrees. Now, as for the aspects, that a new moon in Leo is finding new joys in expressing ourselves, expressing our core identities. But the way that it's shaping up during this new moon, that joy and that comfort in expressing ourselves, in having fun, in childlike joy, comes with an ease to end up with material surprises. So, for example, we might express our inner joy, our inner child, and end up sick. Or express our inner joy, our inner child, and end up spending a lot more money than we were expecting. Or, quite on the contrary, making money, gaining new material possessions that we were not expecting, and rubbing authority figures the wrong way, because Uranus is involved, so there's something here about fighting the power, about rebelling against authority figures. And normally the Sun trine Neptune would mean that the way that we are expressing ourselves, the way that we are shining in the world, or the things that we are illuminating, are delusionally optimistic, or possibly even coming from a higher source. But since Neptune is retrograding at the time of this new moon, that changes how that aspect is read, because it would rather mean that we are shining in ways that are realistic, not based on delusional optimism, not based on seeing the glass half full necessarily, but seeing things for what they are, as they are, and shining because of it. Or shining in spite of the fact that we are having trouble receiving downloads, so to speak. Similarly, we have here that there's a certain ease in if the intuition comes from reviewing our past, that's one of the advantages of a retrograding Neptune. If the intuitive messages come from reviewing our past, then this is a great time to explain those intuitions to other people. In spite of an approaching, at the time of the new moon approaching Mercury retrograde, at the time that I'm recording this video, a Mercury retrograde, but we're talking about the past at this point, so it tracks, right? What's difficult is to put together the ways that we are changing, or the ways that, family members may die at this time, and it may be hard to linguistically express that grief. I don't know why a lot of people in New Age circles have lately, although it is true that Pluto doesn't necessarily mean death, that's one thing, and it's a whole separate matter to deny that Pluto aspects or transits can't manifest as death. They can. For some people, this could be the loss of a sibling, and that may be a challenge that you are facing at this time. For some of us, it might be the death of a neighbor. It might be, let me think, what other... I'm feeling like for most of us, it's going to be that major sweeping changes happen in our lives, and it's hard to think about them consciously or explain them to other people. But those are the possibilities and the possible manifestations. Remember that if I'm talking about the collective, it's going to be different for every person that's hearing this. There's also challenges between the way that we're relating to people or the way that we want to relate to people, and a lot of our material realities. We might want to spend time with certain friends that live far away and not have the finances to go see them, or we might want to go on dates and be too sick to leave the house, or that sort of thing. It might also be that the way that we're expected to make social contacts and develop our social capital conflicts with our current material realities, especially in terms of our bodies and our material possessions, but also our values. It might be required that we relate to people in a way that's very conflictive with the values that we hold, or that we've convinced ourselves are our personal values, and might be forced to make changes to those because of it. And let me see, what else was not in the summary that I read at the start? I also want to say, it should be relatively easy to fight the power with our words. But for the same reason, we might ruffle feathers. So, stay mindful if you don't actually want to do that. There's a few things here too of, like, for example, we're still working on redefining our sense of self and our initiative, our drive, our use of anger and aggression. But now Lilith has moved from Virgo to Libra. As I said, let's discuss it for a little while. So when Lilith was in Virgo, it was a strong temptation to not work on ourselves, not work on our things, not do what we needed to do as part of our responsibilities, and instead spend a lot of time being critical of others, the way that other people are doing things, or the way that other people are using language, so on and so forth. Now that Lilith has moved into Libra, there might be an obsession with partnerships, one-on-one partnerships. There might be an obsession with romantic relationships. There might be an excessive desire to be cordial with people that just are not deserving of any of your time or any presence in your lives. The South Node in Libra very much emphasizes that as well. We've been going through like a whole year of experience and deities and spirits and situations and circumstances pushing us to be less interested or make less of an emphasis on romantic relationships and one-on-one partnerships, or let's say intellectual ideas of beauty rather than realities. Been a push to pay less attention to that, or to emphasize that less, not be so caught up in that sort of thing. And also, with being nice, with being cordial, with everything being so fair and diplomatic, and to instead be more authentic, be more independent, be more outgoing, be more bold, and if need be, fight for your space, fight for whatever you're looking for, or to take up space. If it's necessary to compete or fight to take up space. We've had a whole year. It's going to be, I think the whole period is going to be like a year and a half of needing to be more aggressive in that sense, needing to be more independent, needing to be more outgoing, so on and so forth. But now with Lilith also entering Libra, there might be a tendency to fall back on relationship patterns, or on looking for certain kind of partnerships that do not serve our interests, or do not affirm us, do not honor our heart and our values. And there might be, a tendency to overemphasize being polite, being diplomatic, being cordial over whatever the actual point of a conversation or an exchange is. This is where you see things like unnecessary tone policing, or even offensive, insulting tone policing, while missing the point of whatever is being discussed, whatever is being done. So that's what it's looking like for this new moon in Leo. I don't wanna leave it just talking about the things that are not working, or the things that are not right at this time. I do want to say that this is a great opportunity to, for example, find joy in fighting the power. This is actually, it shows up as one of the great opportunities at this time to do something that is very much against the status quo, or very much against, let's say, tradition, but that affirms us, that is true to who we are at a deeper level. To do more of that, and especially if it's in a physical sense, whether it's the way that you present your body, or the way that you use your body, or the way that you use your material possessions. This is a really good time for that. In that sense, it might be a good time for outfits that look fly, but wearing them in certain situations comes off as insulting to people in power, or to the status quo. This is a really good time as well, I want to say, for, although there's challenges between the ways that we do things like make money, obtain material possessions, so on, versus surprising things that are happening with our material possessions and our bodies and our values. I also want to say that this is a really good time to put your money where your mouth is. If you want to relate to people that better, more closely reflect your values, this is a good time to seek out your tribe in that sense. One of the aspects that I guess, so people often talk about aspects like trines and sextiles as positives, and then I want to say oppositions and squares as though they're difficult aspects as a general rule. But there's contexts in which you can have this dynamic a little backwards, right? Like, for example, if you have a placement or transit that is provoking a problem, and it forms a trine to something else, or a conjunction to something else, then instead of the problem being contained to that area of life, it expands into another or a few others. And similarly, right, two things that should be separate, two things that should not be done together, sometimes having a square between those two things is very favorable. And in this case, that's how I feel, especially about Pluto square the sun. This is not a time to reveal secrets. this is a time to keep certain things secret and set them aside from public view and express in public other things. In this case, publicly express our joy, publicly express ways that we affirm ourselves, things that feel more authentic, but also that maybe we're not showing the public so often, but that there's nothing to be shamed about, and ways in which we might be strange or rebellious or even are engaged in less than licit or legal activity. I'm not going to give examples. This might be a very good time to keep those things far more under wraps, far removed from what we do in public visibly, and then keep it wholesome in public, because that square definitely tells me that if we bring some of those secrets, some of those rebellions, some of those, let's say, some of that political left-handedness into public spheres, at this time it's going to be a problem. At this time, it's going to be very risky and it's going to be very dangerous. I mean, Pluto is involved. It might result in death. Be very careful in shining in a way that marks you as some sort of black sheep during this time. And instead, play nice in public. Do that other stuff. If you're going to continue engaging in this sort of thing, do it in a way that's more hidden, that's more covert, that's less subject to public scrutiny. So that being said, that is what I have to say about the new moon in Leo. Mucha